another event. And for some reason today, it seems like my internet is very unhappy with me because it's cold. So it was a rough morning, but everything seems to be going great so far. But just giving you that update, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. All right, can you guys see my slides?
Yep, looks good.
All right, so we're going to hit this really quick. I'm not a slide person because, as you know, that's new and different. Everything changes in about 5 minutes. So I don't put a lot of stock into slides anymore. I just go into the demo and I start showing, but it depends on the session, right? So we're going to talk about the Admin Center today, a little bit about me. My name is Stacy Deere. I am a Microsoft MVP Office and Apps in Office and Apps. I'm an owner of a company called Focal Point Solutions, where not only am I owner, I'm a senior solutions architect as well. So I do a number of things. I've got tons of specialties throughout the M365 world, event speaker, author, avid sports fan, and I am a fur baby mama, as if you haven't heard that one. You can find my social media links over here. And just because they're that darn cute, they're my babies. So it's my Silver Lab Khaleesi, my Husky Apollo, and my Champagne Lab Yoda. Our agenda today is going to be talking about the admin panel overview, demo, and I will go ahead and I'll say thank you again, but that's all the slides I have. We're going to jump right into it. Is everybody good with that?
Love it.
All right. So not a lot has changed on the M365 homepage, other than they keep adding cards and stuff like that to say, hey, here's something new, like review pending license requests. I will also not only new things that people don't really know that are in the Admin Center as we go through this. So feel free to ask any questions whatsoever. Some people don't know that you can do a dark mode or light mode kind of a thing. I'm indifferent, just depends. But my thing I really like about the Admin Center is it's really hard to keep up with all the changes because they change so much. This what's new option up here is the best thing in the world. One, it's actually updated on a regular basis. And you can tell that because it puts in here every single month the changes that they have made and links to the information. So not only can you go out here and see what they're doing and the changes that they've made, you can actually download it as a PDF so that you can share with others if you would like, just to help people keep up to date on this stuff. The other thing that I really like that Microsoft is doing very well in all of the admin panels is they're adding training guides and assistance in them. You can find documentation, you can find videos, all that type of stuff. They are up to date. They are publishing them as they're doing the updates, so it gives you a lot of information. So things to definitely look for out there. Okay. Nothing really new in users, but the thing I always love to pinpoint here for users is if you're in a total cloud environment where you're creating your users out here, make sure you check out the whole user template scenario. One, if you've got a bunch of users you're creating, it allows you to actually upload them. You can upload multiple users at one time, but you can choose a template. So when you think of a template, think of if you create your contractors one way and your full-time employees another, you can actually create a template, fill it out with the information that you need for like your full-time employees, set the basics, their licensing, any optional settings and all that kind of stuff. And then when you go to reuse that template later, all you're doing is typing in the name and everything else is set for you. So it allows you to quickly and easily and consistently create users within your environment. The other thing I'm a big proponent of is you have columns that they give you that provide you information. Microsoft has been providing us a ton of information about sites and users and teams and usage and all these different things. But the thing that happens in M365, which in any technology that you get into, is you quickly have data sprawl, user sprawl. People aren't, no longer exist, like guest users. You invite guest users into your environment, but then their project's done and no one goes and cleans them up. I'm a huge proponent of quarterly maintenance to keep that stuff clean, because if you don't, you're using resources within your environment that you don't need to use, and it is a potential security risk to your environment as well. So one of the things Microsoft has done really well is in many of the key areas where, going through a bunch of users could be very, very cumbersome, going through the data, you have the ability to actually export the content, and then you can do slicing and dicing of your data so that you can get things cleaned up. Okay. So always look for things like that. Contacts has not really changed anything through the years. Everybody's probably used to that. The one thing to keep in mind, it's a very misnomer, I guess should say, is you will see contacts out here for two reasons. One is if you can see a guest user. Notice if you create a guest user in the environment and you want to add them to a distribution list, guess where they're going to show? They're going to show in contacts. If you create a user that you don't, they're not a guest user, you're not giving them access to a site or a team, but you want to be able to email them. Think of like client mass mailing or something like that. You can't add an external email address to a group. So you would have to create them as a contact within your environment. Then you can add them to the group, and then you can send that information. Okay. And then, of course, Microsoft's given us the great ability to do the deleted users. Now, when a user goes into the deleted users, they're out there for like 90 days. If for some reason you've deleted a user, but you want to reuse the name, same thing with the site or anything you delete, you want to reuse the name. It was some other configuration is the reason why you deleted it or whatever. Just make sure you go out here and physically delete it, or it will tell you it already exists. So it still keeps it in your environment, still got a stub out there, and it doesn't go away until you actually remove it from there. Okay. Teams and groups. Has anybody made the decision yet to move away from security groups when it comes to, say, SharePoint and move strictly to M365 groups? My clients are very mixed. Some are like, nope, we like the security groups, until they realize that in the SharePoint world now, if you're using group sites or teams, you don't have visitors, right? You have owners and you have members if you want the full functionality of a group and all that kind of stuff. So we have some clients that are moving away from it because it limits the amount of Azure, security groups that you need. Because the really cool thing with a Microsoft group, you only have one group, and then within that group, it splits it out between the owners and members. So it keeps it consolidated into one area, which is much easier to manage, keeping things in control. Okay. Also, when it comes to groups, like I said, I'm going back to the quarterly maintenance part. Notice how you can export here. Keep in mind, if you're in a really large environment, what you would want to do here is when you have the export option, I would do it by list. So in here, I can do just M365, and here I can do just distribution. If your environment's not too big, you can pull them all in one report. Then you can slice and dice the data because it does give you a column type so you know what kind it is. Okay. All right. So nothing more new there. Roles and assignments. I tell you, I can't keep up with all the changes with the roles and assignments. They keep adding more. It's a great thing if you are, again, a very large company. If you're a very small company, the roles don't really help you a lot unless you have, like one person that's going to go do your, simulation attack stuff or anything like that. Typically, it's going to be the same people that manage the rest of your environment. Roles just really come into play if you got a rather large organization and you have a diverse spread of who's doing what, when, and where within the environment. But you can go out here and check out the different roles that there are if you're in that type of scenario. Same thing with Exchange and Intune. You pull the list of groups to be a pack. Absolutely, Chris. So you can pull anything that I can pull in the GUI as a report. You can pull in PowerShell. The cool thing about PowerShell is you have options for more fields to pull than you do in the GUI. So PowerShell totally, if you're looking for more data, like Exchange, if you want to know if they're if they're allowed for internal routing, external routing, or whatever, you can pull all that in PowerShell, but you can't through the GUI. So yes, absolutely. Notice on the role assignments for Exchange, you can actually create a role group, meaning if you have someone that has multiple roles. So instead of just, individually selecting different roles for them, you can say, like a junior admin or something like that. And you can go through and select all the things you want to give a junior admin and then apply that group role to that person instead of having to do it individually. So they give you options like that as well. Okay. And then, of course, you have Intune as well. Not as many out here. I feel that this is going to grow just like the others have done in the past as well. But again, notice they give you the ability to export things just so that you can more closely be able to slice and dice through it and get the information. Resources, rooms and resources, none of that's really changed through the years, so we're not going to go spend a ton of time in there. Under, I want to support. This is the big one. So things that are new here, and I love this. I don't know how many of you are consultants, but if you do any kind of Exchange migrations, so I don't know, in the migration world, you have the ability, in the migration world, you have throttling on your tenant. So you can only push so much data at one given time. However, Exchange throttling is completely different than SharePoint and OneDrive throttling. You can increase Exchange throttling, but you cannot on the OneDrive and SharePoint, which means on the OneDrive and SharePoint, you really have to manage your migration to make sure you're not maxing out the tenant, especially during the day. Throttling is much lower between, up to like 5 p.m. at night. After that, then it's much higher, and then on the weekend. So after hours, you got a lot more bandwidth that you can use. So you have to manage your ShareGate or SharePoint and OneDrive migrations. But when it comes to Exchange, you can go out here to the new service request, and there's a few new features that allow you to do this. Normally you'd have to call, they call back and they say, okay, and they do it, right? So they're trying to lower those calls. But if you're doing an Exchange migration, you will have, or like I said, there's some others as well when you do search. If I type in EWS, notice I get this drop down that says increase EWS throttling. So it's a policy that's set in the environment. Typically always had to put in a ticket, make a call, that whole thing. But now they've actually built this in because people do it so much. First thing that they require you to do is run a test. So what it's doing, it's going out and making sure that there's no visual issues for, on the code and stuff that it's running into. It's checking to see if there's already or a previous policy that has been set. So it's going out and checking all that information. We'll give that a minute and I'll show you what that looks like. Here we go. So notice it's giving me the information. No, even though after throttling has been set, imports will be limited to 150 meg per 5 minutes per mailbox. So it's higher, and a lot of people don't have issues once it gets here, but you can actually choose 30, 60, or 90 days. After that 30, 60, or 90 days, you can go out here and renew it as well and extend it another 30, 60, 90 days. I also know, because I have a migration that I'm working on right now, that I was having a problem. This was set, okay? This was set, but I was getting 54 meg per hour. Total problem, right? Never going to finish this migration. There have been known issues where even though this was set, something happened incorrectly on the back end and it didn't activate. And so it actually limited it more. So that did require a call. They were able to fix it. during that call, what I found out, if you've got a large number of exchange mail migrations that you're doing, they actually can increase you higher than this if you ask very nicely. Yes, and like I said, ask nicely. So I asked him, he said yes, and I'm cruising on my exchange migrations on this project. So you would just acknowledge and you would update. It goes out and updates the policy, give it about 10 minutes, and then your throttling is good to go. But you do not have this option when it comes to SharePoint and OneDrive. Okay. When you contact support, so just some things that I've learned through the years here is, one, be as descriptive as possible. If you have or can, I would, in any situation, should be able to take some kind of pictures, take as many pictures as possible. Okay. The other thing I have learned through the grapevine is recording calls. If you do a yes or a no, it actually where you write to or where you're routed to, right? So no, there's could be a security clearance, confidential thing type of scenario. You actually route differently. So yes, get you through the normal thing, and seems to always be much faster than the no. It will tell you your ask you your preferred method, but then tell you how long you might be waiting before you actually hear from them. Here's my problem with this. And so something I've always done in your description, if you're someone like me, I average 32 meetings a week. So Microsoft randomly calling me does not work. So in my description, I always add, please email me. So I put email down here. I said, please email me to schedule a time, right? Because even though sometimes I say email, they still call, just FYI. But what's even better is here recently, they're actually starting to chat with you in Teams, which I love. They start, like one day I was sitting there working and I was in a meeting and I'm sitting here focused, and all of a sudden I see a Teams thing that says, hey, I'm so-and-so from Microsoft. I'm like, why is he chatting me? So, it was interesting, went over it, and it was about my support ticket, and we literally took care of the issue all through Teams, which to me is great because it works better with, my busy schedule, and stuff like that. So it didn't require a call or anything, but I'm very sure that it depends on what kind of a ticket you have submitted, because some of them are going to require a call where they're going to have to do logging and stuff like that. But just keep in mind, you may get a pop-up on your Teams. They do, Neil. I tell you, it's the thing that bothers me the most about support, which is why I'm like, I need to learn the insides and out of this support so I can help other people so they don't have to go through my stressors with them.
I
right?
put it in uppercase even.
Me too. I have many times. And when I get the phone call, I'm like, hey, won't you go read the description I gave you? So,
Exactly.
and here's where you add your file. So now you guys are going to learn something I did that was very, I don't know, I should have paid attention. But if you have a tenant that you're working on, or your tenant, so a use case scenario, I have a client that is North America, work with their North America base, but their tenant is actually in Japan. Their time zone that their environment defaults to for anything that you go into, when you set the default, that's what it's going to go to here. Okay. I didn't think about that one day. I'm putting in a support ticket and I hit contact me. Anybody want to know what happens when you leave it at Japan time and then they call you? You get woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So make sure you change the time zone to where you are. That way you're properly routed to the proper help desk, so that you get a call in your normal business hours, or within the time frame you want, and not like in the middle of the night and you say, why the heck are you calling me? Like I did. He goes, well, you put in a ticket. Okay. So just be very careful about that. All right. Of course, you can always view your support requests in here, and all that kind of stuff, and updates and whatnot. This is something that is pretty new. I've not done it yet, but Microsoft has added in a Microsoft hardware support area. Now, this is being connected to, like, you know, how virtual desktops and all that kind of stuff that is starting to be brought into the tenant and different things like that. So you can actually like do warranty. There's a warranty page out here. There's, you know, like literally tracking the status of, you know, your computer and issues. I'd like to think that this is, you know, hopefully a good thing. And I woke up one morning and my Surface laptop a few years ago, my favorite computer of all time. I still want to cry when I remember I woke up and it was dead, couldn't charge, it was just done. It was right around COVID and the Microsoft store shut down. Well, then the Microsoft store never started back up in my area, and there was nowhere for me to send it to, another store even close. Supposedly, I could now, if this existed back then, I could have handled getting that laptop fixed through this scenario. Again, it is new. I've not learned all the caveats about it, but if you have defective, you know, hardware, things aren't working, you can check this out. It is currently available in 32 countries, which you can go out and see the list under the Learn More here, but you do have to request access. So that is relatively new, but kind of cool. All right. We don't need to do, so search is getting bigger and bigger, which is kind of cool. So you can supercharge your workspace. So some of this stuff has been out here for a long time. Just some people don't realize it. Here, just a, you know, an overview of your search, and you got analytics, user analytics, query analytics, stuff like that, right? But here are the things that I think are really cool. If, you know, you're using, you know, if you're using SharePoint, you got search, all that kind of stuff. If you are a company that has an acronym for this and an acronym for that, you can add those acronyms in here, what they stand for, their description, the source of it, like a URL or whatever you want to put in here. And then when you're searching, this information will come up in your search. Same thing with bookmarks that you can supply to your users. Notice Microsoft has a bunch of default ones. You can add additional ones out here. So if you do a search for Yammer, this is always the first one that comes up because it's already out here, right? If you're a large company that has multi-floors, you can actually put floor plans out here, and so that those show in your search. Same thing with locations. Would you have to assign someone a role to have access to? They would have to have, yeah, so a typical user's not going to be able to do that. I mean, if you had everybody as a global reader, they'd be able to see it, but they wouldn't be able to do anything. So it would have to be an admin, and I have not seen, I can check, Brenda. I'll follow up on that to see if they've added a role, but I don't think so. I think it's from a user admin perspective. So, but I'll double check that, because like I said, that's new, and it wouldn't surprise me if they did, because that would be kind of nice if you had a pseudo repair in your company, and then you could expedite it through something like that. So I will check on that for you. Locations, you can add your different locations within your organization, their addresses, keywords, stuff like that. And you can do Q&A. So questions like Q&A that, you know, that you could show up and search, like things like, what are our help desk hours? And then it, you know, it in your search, it would tell you what your hours are, all that kind of stuff. So you're essentially building in your personal company's information into search, and when they search, it comes up. So they don't, you know, I'm a huge governance person, providing the data to information for things within a company, so you have something documented and everything. This helps with that. You can put a lot of that type of information in here, okay? And then certain special topics, if there's something like if you have a merger going on or anything like that, you can add topics out here so that they show up in your search. Okay. And then you have where you can add additional data sources and other apps and stuff like that. A great example is if your company has an internet site, someone is updating that. It has different content than you share inside your intranet on your homepage, but maybe you want to make that content available and you don't want them to have to go out to the internet site. You could easily connect that internet site to your search, so it's out there crawling that, so you can just use that information as well. All right. And then you've got some customizations with verticals that you can do. You know, we've all seen the file sites, people, when you can add different ones there. And then, so the schema, and this is, I'm still flaky on what this is actually doing, because I actually think this is going away because it's building into the graph. Because as you notice here, it says the graph connector schema, and you can view the details. I think that's all going to be baked into the graph. So but they have some different things around schema and verticals you can do. And then some additional configurations is around the whole Bing stuff. Do you want to, and I'm going to tell you, I am an MVP. I'm Microsoft through and through, but I'm not a fan of Bing. But I do incorporate it if I have others in my company that use Bing. I do think it is very cool that if I'm in Bing and instantly things that are active within my company, I'm seeing right there on the new tab homepage, right? I think that's very cool. I just really wish it worked in like Google and other things as well. But this is where you turn that on, So you have like people insights, item insights, meetings, just Microsoft turning it on in general and all that kind of stuff. So if you use Bing, I highly, highly recommend it because it is super cool and it's a great way to bring that stuff together. I just wish they'd expand that a little more. Org settings. So what I will say with this is we all know that new services come into play. This is just that area that everybody should check. If you're the admin and you're the person who's supposed to configure your environment and you're trying to decide what you're using, what you're not using, and how they use it, you want to go out to your services and check all of them. Okay, because they have different settings. It's not just like turning on bookings or turning it off. It's what you want to allow them to do in it. So interestingly enough, almost every one of these, there's a security aspect to it. So you're allowing bookings in the, I'm allowing it in the organization, but do I want to block bookings from outside the organization? Do I want to block social sharing options? So you can really whittle down what you want to do, what you want to allow your user to do, and what you don't want to allow them to do. So if you've never spent time going through these, definitely do so. Okay. I'm also a firm believer, if your company is not using the functionality, turn it off. Okay. Because if you have it on, just because you say you're not using it as a company, if it's out there, someone's going to use it, which means you've got to support it. Okay. Security and policy. Here's just some of your Bing data collection stuff. Idle session timeout. So this is just, do you want to turn off, log someone out? There are ways. So I am if you have a lot of travelers within your organization, right? But you don't want to limit your internal people. If they're there at their desktop, they walk away, you don't want to log them out because that becomes cumbersome for someone that's internal to your network. However, if you have a lot of travelers and you have at least a P1 license, you can create a conditional access policy to essentially do the same thing, but then state that if they're outside of this IP address range is when it's active. Okay, so when I travel, granted, I don't go too far from my computer, but if someone's talking to someone, airport bar or lounge or whatever, and their computer's open, but they're not looking at it, but it's open, someone could walk up their shoulder. Maybe you, automatically log them out after a period of time for additional security reasons for travelers. Okay. Password expiration policy. Oh, okay. Thank you, Brenda. Password expiration policy. You can set it to never expire, which is recommended. And some people say, why would you do that? The reason is because in M365, security is an onion. The Azure level is that top layer, but in Azure, there's many different things you can do with the conditional access policies, and just your network configuration, etc. But then when you get down into the tenant and you look at, say, your security report, which we will go through a little bit here. If you're doing the things in, setting your conditional access policies up and you are doing all the things that it's telling you in your security report, you've got so many layers of security before you even get down to the user's password. Okay. So which is why they say they recommend this, and they recommend self-service password reset, because it takes additional load off of IT. But don't do that unless you have ensured that all your above layers of security have been taken care of. Otherwise, it's no different than what we were used to 10 years ago when we said, hey, we got to set a password expiration and all that kind of stuff. Okay. If your company has a privacy profile, so just information about your privacy, you can put the URL out here and who you would contact in regards to that. And then on sites, it would show underneath your question mark. Okay. And then sharing. So sharing is sharing content external to the world. Okay. Again, my recommendation is that this is turned off unless your entire environment, you want to share, be able to potentially share with everybody. Okay. My thing around this, unless you're doing domain approved access, so you're validating a domain and adding that domain to say, yes, we can share with these people, anybody in this domain, and then adding users that way. So if you're locked down that way, then I'm okay also leaving it checked to allow it. Otherwise, my thought process is turn it off. Then if I create a site or anything like that, then I have to make the conscious effort to say, I need this set up so I can external share, and then I turn it on instead of having it on by default, because then it makes you have a conscious effort to think. When you do a default and just turn it on, you don't even think about that. Okay. So those are my recommendations around that. So the organization profile is also something that's very nice to be able to really help you mold your M365 tenant to be very specific to your organization. You have custom app launcher tiles, which are essentially, you're just adding maybe a custom app that you use up here. Okay. So like, I think I probably have, so like I have Paycor up here. So I can create Paycor because this is something my company uses. So I want it to be easy to find. And if they're getting used to using their apps up there, why not? So I can pin it just like I can the other apps, right? So now it's right here. Custom themes, there's been some changes in here, which I kind of like. Notice I have a default theme. I can prevent users. None of this stuff is really changed here. But the cool thing is because you can have multiple hubs now, which gives you different themes that you can have. If and everything, you can add multiple themes as well. And notice you're applying them to certain groups at the same time. So I can give it names, so I can have multiples, which is so cool. Think about companies who have different entities, and those entities still run under their own name and own logo and all that kind of stuff. This helps you, one, keep them in the same environment, but also allow them to be themselves. I always mention data location just because I've experienced an issue here. I had a client that was having horrible issues with speed, slowness, connection, the whole 9 yards. I worked with Microsoft. We ended up going in here and realizing, even though this client was in the United States, that their tenant was overseas. So when it got spun up, something happened and it ended up getting spun up in the wrong data center. So it had to be moved. So if you're experiencing brand new tenant and it's having some major slowness issues, definitely something to check out. Help desk information just allows you put in title of your help desk, phone number, email to like a support email or to a person. You can put a URL into the ticketing system or to open a ticket itself, type of thing. You say open a ticket, put it in here. When you save that on your sites, it will also show up underneath that question mark. Cool thing I like now is they've added keyboard shortcuts. Anybody shortcut people? I totally am. I'll take a shortcut any day to save time, right? You now have some additional shortcuts that you can put in here that they have in here, like add a user, shift AU, reset password. So some of the common things that you use day to day, they have added it in here for you. Support integration. So something new here. So anybody use any support tool, support applications like, oh shoot, which one? ServiceNow. There you go. They automatically now have this integrated in. The only thing that you have to do is go apply the application ID for the OAuth token, and you're integrating your ServiceNow into your system. They do plan on to adding others in here, and just kind of really growing this. So definitely something to look out if you have third-party applications for support. Totally look at that. The more you can integrate, make it easier for your users is great. For some reason, I got thing got weird. Let's just refresh this. All right, there we go. All right, any questions on that stuff? Okay, moving along. Setup. So this is another area that Microsoft is doing a lot of development in. One of the biggest pain points of getting a tenant, and I've showed you different configuration pieces. Maybe you've seen them before, maybe you haven't. Hopefully I've taught and shown you some new things. The thing that has always been the biggest complaint is, hey, I got a tenant, everything works, so they feel like it's done. But I go back to the days of the on-prem environment that when you spun it up and then it said, hey, now you have these things that you have to configure. What are you going to use? And you can go and configure them. It kind of walked you through it. It had a wizard, right? We had the gray wizard, the white wizard. But they had nothing like that in the tenant itself to let you know things that you needed to do. They have now taken steps to help provide that information, and you can find that in the setup. Okay. So they have like sign in and security information here. So notice I have one that's not been done, but you can kind of follow along here. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind. Is it everything? No, but Microsoft is doing a really good effort to get there, but it is some place that you can go in and really get started. Okay. Reports. So this is another area I think Microsoft, I know they are continuing to provide information. Earlier, I mentioned the whole quarterly maintenance. I bet you when I do quarterly maintenance between the reports, like the users I'm pulling to make sure, guest users are getting cleaned up, anybody that, didn't get disabled, email accounts, sites, teams, all that kind of stuff. I'm pulling a number of different things. I'm pulling auditing reports and all that kind of stuff. But there are things also that I also think are very valuable to clients. And sometimes I'll just go grab the information so they have a visual representation. But you have something in here called the adoption score. So if you've never been in there, when you click on it the first time, you essentially you're saying, yeah, I want this information. I think it takes 24 to 48 hours to completely fill out. But what it does is kind of shows you how your company is using these different pieces and parts of the tenant, right? Of your application. So like you got communications, meetings, content collaboration, like you can click into these and drill down, right? And actually see how people are using the data, right? Which provides you really good feedback to say, wait a minute, maybe we really need to do some training in this area, or hey, we see people really starting to do this. Maybe we need to start developing plans to grow that, or add additional security or, compliance things, stuff like that. So I believe information like this is very important if you want to grow successfully within the M365 world, because if you just let it continue to grow from a content and user standpoint, but you're not looking at how they're using it, I feel like some people could really paint themselves into a corner and trying to come back out of that's a little bit harder. So, and then you have usage reports as well. the really big thing that I always tell everybody, the great thing that they've done is really anything in here that has a hook into it means that you can kind of automate it. And what I mean by that is, like, I've got email activity. So I'm just go into this report here. Okay. Notice I can, I can see what things are done, how they're split out, but I have the ability to export. I can also change, notice I got 7 down to 180 days. I can export this data. So I have a hook into it. If I can export this data, I can set up a Power Automate to automatically pull this data whenever I want to, filter it into a SharePoint list, attach some Power BI to it, and have some really nice dashboards within IT or management type of a site to show that you guys are growing in your usage in Exchange, or Exchange is going down because people are using Teams more, that type of historical data on how things are being utilized. So you have a lot of really cool things that you can do in an environment, in this environment with what they're providing you now. Okay. And then health area here. So here's just the normal dashboard, shows you the health of everything, but you don't get it, you don't see everything over there. So we'll go to service health. So any active issues that are going on, and here's your full list, right? So if you have active issues that Microsoft is, you can go out here. So if you're having an issue, always first go out here and say, okay, is it already a recorded issue? Okay. Users may be unable to view the presence of any Microsoft Team user. Well, everybody's probably had that issue from time to time. I think that's just a standing issue. But it shows me that it was last updated at this date, right? But hey, if I'm having this issue now, I can go out here and say, all right, show me what's going on. So it's an advisory. Here's all the updates. So it gives me the updates. The last time it was updated, but look, I have got running notes for when it started and all the processes they're doing, changes they've made and all that stuff to see it to close. So I can monitor this. Okay. So you can go out here first. A lot of times what I find, if there's a big issue going on, it's already been reported by somebody. And so I don't need to go put in another ticket unless it says, hey, if you're having this issue, you need to put in a ticket with this information so they can fix it on their end. But they will give you that information. Okay. And then down here for your service health, so notice I've got 2 advisories here. I can click on this. Okay. Why am I not able to click on it? Well, what the heck? Oh, I bet you it's in here. I can click on it. Yeah. I don't know why. One you can click on, one you can't. There we go. I don't know why one you can and one you can't. But anyways, it just kind of splits out those different advisories that you're looking for. But like I said, this one doesn't have as much data as this one. And of course, 2 different ways of functionality because you can't click on these. But, the message center. Microsoft's not perfect. I'll never say that. All right, so the message center has been out here for a very long time. Something new they added, which is I think is really cool. So if you have Exchange admins or SharePoint Teams admins, stuff like that, notice you have this option to sync into Planner now. So you can assign people tasks to handle things that are coming out of the message center. So say you've got something that is deprecating, right? So you can sync to Planner and you can say, hey, you need to go make these changes in our environment because this is deprecating. You got to go from this to that. Yeah, it is, Lucas. I love it. The other thing is, so using it for deprecations is great. The other thing is for new features. So one of the biggest things is for new features is Microsoft is, they do their best at telling us. Sometimes they still miss stuff, but new features are coming in. Like I would have loved a long time ago when, groups got introduced, one, that Microsoft didn't turn them on by default for everybody in the organization, right? We know what kind of mess that caused. Tons of groups got created, resources being used, etc. having something out here saying that, hey, groups is coming, we're going to turn it on for everybody, and someone to have a task to look into that new feature, find out what the ins and outs about it, and say, oh, hey, I want to disable this for all the users before it goes live. You have that ability, right? So they are now providing you the option, the availability to put this into Planner, assign tasks to make sure that things are getting taken care of out of here. Okay. The other cool thing with the preferences is if you can customize what you want to see in this view here. Okay, so you can go through and say, these are things I'm responsible for. So if you're only responsible for Exchange, then just choose Exchange, and that's all you see in this list. Okay. You can also get an email digest, which I absolutely love because you have options. All right, so primary email address, notice it's mine. Notice I have an other email address. Anybody want to guess what this email address is? Someone answers it, your name will get put in a drawing for $25. Tim's just itching to give away $25. Exactly, Lucas. It goes to, I'm saying, hey, I want this information to go to this Teams channel. So then I'm sharing it with everybody inside my organization. Ron, I believe there is. We've done a bunch of different scenarios in there. My dev guys have been all over it because we live and die by this, because this is how we help our clients, give them, because we know they get busy. So we try to, if we know a client uses something, we'll send them out a notification and say, hey, this is coming up. You're going to need to check this. So we try to stay on top of that by making sure everybody in the company gets it in Teams. So if it's a high priority and all that stuff. Oh, in this instance, yes, it's just emailing. Sorry. So I've done some other cool things with it. I wish we could turn it into a bot somehow. That'd be cool. But anyways, notice here, send me emails for major updates, send me emails for data privacy messages, and then just give me a weekly digest of anything I have selected. Again, this is per person. So you choose what you want so that you can streamline down to the information that you want to receive. And then the other admin can go do theirs, etc. But my biggest thing about also bringing this, the ability to bring this into Teams or filter it to a SharePoint list or any stuff like that, because behind the scenes, this is just a list, as you can kind of tell, right? Filtering it to a list or whatever is, wouldn't it be great? Microsoft provided us this new makers scenario. So we want our users to go out and build their own applications and the Power Platform and stuff like that. We make it in things intuitive so they can do it and IT doesn't have to. But by looking at this, who's the people that are getting this information? IT. Wouldn't it be really cool if you made sure that your users are getting information around SharePoint changes, Teams changes, Outlook changes. So if they're using any of that functionality or new functionalities coming out, they also have the ability to see it the same time you do. More people that see it. I mean, you don't know what marketing has built. If they have someone that's been playing with Power Automate and creating, Power Automates and Power BI dashboards and workspaces, you don't know exactly what they're doing. So you wouldn't know to reach out to them. So it's a great way to be able to supply that information to the users as well, so that they can help support what they have built. All right, product feedback. So Microsoft has always provided that the option to give feedback, right? So you can see it in sites and all that kind of stuff, right? But the thing is if I did the feedback and I submitted something, it goes to Microsoft, right? But the thing is what if I said, oh my God, I said, I see this person has this option, but when I go there, it doesn't work. They send something like that. Well, that's not actually providing, it's providing feedback, like you're giving an issue. Not really feedback on, hey, I really like how this looks or it doesn't look. Some people say, the color of the bar up here, I don't like it. They don't realize that the company decides what color they want that. It's a company standard, most likely branding. So we have no idea what people are supplying to Microsoft. And I have had someone, say, hey, this doesn't work, that work. And someone at Microsoft, whoever's getting this, took the initiative to call the person of record to try to help resolve that issue. Well, it was a company mandated policy that they were complaining about. It wasn't really an issue within the environment. So what Microsoft has actually done is any feedback that is supplied, you can actually see it in this list and delete it so Microsoft doesn't get it. So now they're giving internally people access into, we can filter that. We can filter that now as admins, which is pretty nice. We have network connectivity in here, which is it's relatively new. It's been out for a little bit. I've done it in a few of my demos. I have to say I feel like it still has some growing to do. But you can actually collect and analyze data through like network traffic, right? So and see kind of how you are. So notice here, it's just telling me in my environment right now, 59 points out of 300 of my network assessment. Now, my company is all cloud, so keep that in mind. There's no on-prem Azure AD connecting in or anything. It's all cloud. All right, so it's just saying my assessment info. Now, what's weird is you see this little dip here. Anybody want to guess where I was? On that date, I was, where was I? Canada, I believe. Yeah, I was not at home. So I'm assuming based off of the location of some of my team as an overall, because mine was horrible, that's why this is dropped, right? So can you disable product feedback? You cannot from the GUI, but if I remember correctly, there is a PowerShell to disable it or hide it, one or the other. It's a disable or hide. So you can kind of see information here. You can see some insights if there was connectivities, locations, like if you had multiple locations in your environment, you can put them in here and kind of track that stuff. So samples collected. And what that really means in this is just that overall. And I can just drop down and, see overall right here. And it just adjusts. So if you go to network connectivity test here, so I'm going to tell it to automatically detect my location, add my domain. It's optional if I want to choose my domain or not. And I'm just going to hit run test. I'm going to hit allow. So it's running browser test. Now I have a 1 gigabit pipe, but in this cold in my house, I don't know what I got. All I know is it's cold. But here it shows, this chart shows your network connection quality for Microsoft 365 customers in your area. Customers. So not just me, but customers in my location. But notice where my location, it says I kind of am. Like the kind of all over. Good question. I wonder what I'm getting ready to show you next, if this is maybe will help. So you see this here, so downloading a file so you can run it on your device. So now what happened, if you guys saw it kick off in the top, it downloaded this. So I can run this, I can send this to anybody's computer that I want to run their connection specifically. Me personally, I really think that, it's got to do the runtime. Sorry, new computer, because my computer crashed when I was in Canada. Kind of, sort of, maybe. Go away. God, just go. No, go away. Other, go away. Cancel, go away. All right. So you have to download the runtime and all that stuff. I won't go through all that because it can take some time. But essentially, you can run this on any of the devices that are connected to your network, and it brings the data back into here so you can analyze it. So it helps you identify like if you're working fine, but this person keeps complaining about slowness or whatever, you can run that on there and try to help diagnose what the actual issue is. Thank you, Lucas, for sharing that. You guys are on it. I love helpful ones. All right, and software updates. So here you go. Here's they're giving you more information about software updates for the Office apps and Windows, but you have to go configure your settings. So You have to just choose your Azure description or Azure subscription. And if you have your log analytics, which if you don't have your log analytics workspace created, it will show up in, I believe your security report. And if I hit save, then I will actually see Windows updates come up here as well. Okay. So it's a great way to just kind of see the updates. What? Here, use this one. I built you. I better have permissions, right? Just saying. No. Do. All right, there you go. All right. Anyways, that's where you can see those. So that is very new as well. Okay. All right. Don't laugh at me, Troy. My thoughts on Windows 10 versus 11. You want my honest opinion or do you want the Microsoft answer?
Always the honest.
All right. All right, Microsoft, if you want to look like Apple, just go for it. Stop just giving us bits and pieces. Just do it. Just do it. For one, because I have an Apple and I've got Apple users in my company, and every time now, like some of the things like how the whole thing down here is so Apple that it's crazy, but you don't have a lot of the other functions. So when I look down here, a lot of times I'm feeling like I'm on my Apple and I'm trying to swipe and do all, and that doesn't work, right? But when it comes to functionality between 10 and 11, I do have to say it feels like things are a lot more optimized in Windows 11, so they run faster. I keep opening. Yes, thank you, Tim. Thank you. Thank you. I open the wrong things all the time. It took me forever. I kept going over here to shut down. I come over here, like right click. Where's my task manager? I'm sorry, where's my task manager? It's not there, right? So there's things I love, but then the things that we have just grown to use so much aren't where they have been forever. But other than that, I mean, like the actual using 11 as in like speed and issues, I have to tell you, I've had a lot less, and I was even in the beta of 11 when it first came out, but I have, and I'm going to cross my fingers, other than my computer dying, which was nothing with the application itself when I was in Ottawa, I've never had a blue screen on 11 like I did 10. You don't need, Neil, I don't know. I don't know if you can.
I don't know either. We've limited everybody to 10 right now. We got 400 plus, and we wanted to make sure that we limit the number of support cases that come in if we just jump to 11 without some kind of good plan.
Yeah, I don't know that you can change the look, because one of the things, like when you go to like the desktop configuration, I've been in there a number of times because I run so many dang monitors that, setting up that configuration, I don't think I've ever seen anything that allows me to change it to the old look and feel. And I mean, realistically, based off of how certain things work, I don't know that you can, just because the bits are 100% different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Didn't mean to digress, but the software updates made me think of it.
yeah. Oh yeah. I'm with you. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something to think about. I mean, I can check it out. My dog's laying on my power cord and I didn't realize she unplugged it. Khaleesi. Hold on. I don't want to die here. A 100-pound lab sitting on, well, not 100 pounds. Sorry, Felicia. She's like,
Like
I'm
you
not
said, it's
100.
probably a mix of things you can and can't do between the
Yeah.
two.
Yeah, I know you can't play with the bottom bar, because that was the first thing I wanted to change, was the bottom bar, because I was between Apple and this, it was just, I was doing wrong commands. Like, you can swipe on here, don't get me wrong, but the thing is when you swipe to the one, you actually can't swipe to get back to where you were before. It doesn't work, especially or at least in Teams. I haven't accidentally done it in anything else, but I was doing documents in Teams, and I did a swipe thinking I was on my Apple, and it actually swiped. I'm like, oh, well, that's cool, but hey, I need to go back to that. And it didn't work. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to hit some admin centers here. So the biggest one, like, of course, is setting up your tent. That's where like a lot of changes have been, just because Microsoft's really working hard on that. The other big changes is security compliance. A lot of the others don't change, but we will hit some of my main points for those. But I actually used this as a trivia question when I was in Florida this week in one of my sessions, because I did a keeping up with the admin center session. And one of my trivia questions is, what is the name of the security admin center? So people would answer security admin center thinking it was dumb. And they're like, and then I'd like, nope, that's wrong. It's Microsoft Defender. And they're like, oh crap. Yeah. So I'm like, they're change stuff all the time. But inside here, the most important thing for me is the secure score, which is literally just your security report. Okay. You go in here, it'll tell you what your current score is, and it will show you your history as well. Okay. This is just the overview page. It shows you the breakdown by category, and it kind of tells you where you kind of sit. So I don't have any that are regressed, but regressed means that it's been configured. Microsoft made an update, so now you got to go back and do some more configuration, or another admin changed something in that configuration, so it's now not 100%. So that's regress. So that's why you would get those. How many you need to address? How many planned? Okay. So plan means, hey, we are going to turn on MFA, but we're actually implementing Duo, and here's the date. So it's planned. So you've got a plan for it. Risk accepted just means, you know what, our company doesn't do this, so I don't really need to configure it. So we're just going to accept that risk, just so that it's not telling me all the time that I need to do something about it. Microsoft is supposed to, any new actions, tell you the recently added ones to your list. FYI, I've never seen it come off 0, but yet I had 10 new ones a few months ago. And then any recently updated. I have a feeling they're still working on these because, like I said, I've never seen them populate anything. All right. So if you go to recommended actions, again, look, I've got a nice little export. Okay. So I have export of the information. And essentially they put them in order by score impact, and it tells you like the number of points you can achieve, and then your status. So your address, and then down here, notice this one says using a third party, and this one's completed. So I'm going to use this as an example. So when you go in here, you can edit the status and action, which we'll do in a minute, but it gives you an action plan, a description, what you're doing, implementation status, and your user impact, i.e. Microsoft provides you so much information these days. Never reinvent the wheel and think you have to go document anything. Go out and copy and paste. They've done a great job of providing that. In the message center, they give a ton of information to provide the users for changes, and they do the same thing out here. They also provide additional security things based off of whatever this is. This is multi-factor, and like, okay, here's some additional stuff you may want to look into. I can go to implementation. Notice it will tell me if I have any prereqs, next steps, and if I want to learn more. And then look, that actually will provide you history about it. So if I go into edit, here's when I can say I want to address, plan, I'm going to accept it. Any of them, planned, you want to put notes. To address, of course, you're not going to have, it just needs to. Risk accepted. Why are you accepting this risk? Resolve through a third party, i.e. there's like an example there. Resolve through alternate mitigation. You can put that and then put that in there. Okay. So you make sure that you're actually putting data out here, because if not, constantly your score is going to show. So look, I've got a 10 out of 10 because a third party is handling this. You want your score to be as high as possible, and if you're using it, let the system know you are. Otherwise, when you see those analytics where it says, hey, companies near you, here's what they are, you're not showing your true score to your management. You're not showing the true score for the analytics as in general. Okay, so it is a really good thing to actually go out here and make sure these don't say to address. Okay, now the other thing to keep in mind, I believe they've recently finally took them all out. Oh, nope, they have one here, but that doesn't make any sense. Oh, this, okay. See on the implementation, this prereqs. So this is for Microsoft Defender. So it will tell you this here is actually, do you have the license to do it? Okay. So it's telling me that I have a prereq here for create safe link policies for email messages. If you don't have the proper license, it will be an X. So you can't actually configure this because you don't have a license. So in your edit status, you can actually put out here risk accepted and then why. You don't own the license, or you can put planned, hey, you know, next year budget, we plan on getting the Office 365 P1 so we can configure this, those types of information. So you will want to make sure that you have the license. So either way, you may not be able to configure it just because it's here, but you need to address it in some way. Does that make sense? All right. All right, so that's essentially how the secure score works. It's great for all that kind of stuff. And it really helps you build those layers. Is an additional license you need to purchase above them. Yes, so there's different layers. So you get this like the standard, like E5. So in E5 you get Defender, but there's a P1 level, and I believe there's a P2 on Defender now as well. So there's just like with you know, like the Azure P1 and P2, you get more with it. Defender's kind of grown into that same thing.
Yeah, it's like the Microsoft XDR is the umbrella. They got all these different things that you can buy, and then they get surfaced into this Defender panel.
Yep. Got it. Yep. Right. Some other things that you've seen here, just like the normal alerts and incidents, none of that stuff has really changed. Absolutely, Troy. Absolutely. So you can go out and do some hunting. So which is literally just doing some different queries within your environment on events, directory events, etc. They just have it kind of built in to kind of help you run some queries within your organization now, which is kind of cool. If you've never played with that, this is not something you can break. You're just querying data. Definitely go out and do so. This is one of the reasons I really like the Security Center now too, with some of the stuff that they have come up with. I don't have any hunting, so I'm not going to see any rules. Is you have different areas out here where it says, hey, go do simulations, and you can go do trainings. So you also have the Learning Hub, which is cool. You know, like I mentioned a long time ago, Microsoft has added all kinds of learning opportunities in everything so that you can learn it very well to go out and be able to implement it. So I love the Learning Hub out here. You have trials now. So you can go out and try before you buy, which I suggest. And the reason is because I have had clients say, I want this, this, and this because I need ultimate security, all that kind of stuff, right? But then they buy it, they're spending the money every month, a lot of money every month, and they never get it implemented. Go try it, make sure it's what you really think it is before you go and spend that extra money. Okay? Nothing wrong with that. So that's just partners there. Assets, identities, stuff. So yeah, these are just user identities out here. It just shows you the apps, what they're using, all that fun stuff. Okay. You can do your investigations out here, but look, see what it does. You can instantly go set up a trial for a Microsoft Defender for Office 365, right? So you can go set up a trial, try it out before you buy. You have Explorer, same way. It's all wrapped up into some of the additional Defender stuff. Review just shows you any of your quarantined items, messages that you might have, and any restricted entities. So like if someone blocks somebody and then, but say it was a valid person for you, you can go out here and unblock that person. Threat tracker, I think is really cool. If you ever get a chance to play with that, I think that is amazing. But my favorite one is the attack simulation training. You can try out a teaser and you can start a free trial, but essentially don't do this. I mean, you can do it before you like do the initiative. Like if I've shown you things with security that you don't have configured that you think you better go back and check, run it, go and try it out and see where you are now. Then go fix all your security stuff and then go run another attack simulation and see how your environment does. See how you guys would, hold up if you guys got attacked. They do it they do it in Exchange Admin Center as well, but you can also do Exchange message tracing through here and any the built-in policies and rules. So threat policies, there's a ton of them out here. You can go out here and see what they're currently configured at. If you've never been out here, it's all default. You may have some additional things that you want to put in here or turn off. But you can, anything out here you want to go investigate so you can make sure that your users are as safe as possible when they're mail and all that kind of stuff. There's a ton of stuff out here. You can do your cloud discovery out here. If you have any, there you go. So notice it would tell you traffic from any high risk apps. You can then drill into it and see which apps those are. But it just is really giving you a huge insight to your overall environment of what's going on. And then it gives you the ability, then you can go set policies or change or adjust the current security you have to tighten things down even more. Notice here in the cloud app catalog, so these are all the apps within the tenant, and it's showing me my risk score and then actions and all that kind of stuff. So you'll see, come on, there you go. There you go, risk score. So you can see a lot of information, like again, I mean, they give you deep dive into this stuff now, which is pretty cool. Oh, OAuth apps. If you're using any OAuth apps, you will see those here. App governance. I'm all about app governance. If you're a governance person, try this out. Governance is big because you got to know your governance. You got to know what your company's all about, how it uses different applications, what your users and the company as a whole are allowed or not allowed to do. And it really should be documented somewhere. Through the years, I've created governance sites for clients and stuff like that. Now, will this cover everything? No, it's more the IT back inside. You still need your governance for other policies and procedures, but from an IT, Microsoft stack standpoint, the app governance and the governance log are huge to be able to help you try to manage that type of stuff so that you can make sure you adhere to your compliance regulations and policies that you have. Yes, it does, Troy. Yes, it does. All right. And of course, down here, then you've got some policy management. Notice bunch of them out of the box, but you can create your own policies. Okay. And then you have some policy templates that they supply to you as well, meaning, hey, new risk app, they've already kind of set it up for you. You just have to fill in the information. So very much like if you ever go use a Power Automate, you see all those templates, you just fill in the blanks, same thing. Okay. Again, they provide you a ton of reports. You can go pull a security report, which is the secure score, email collaboration reports, schedules, and here you just go to download the reports, etc. And then you have audit in security and in compliance. So the cool thing about auditing, this is something I always suggest, very certain key things to go in and do at a quarterly maintenance scenario as well, like permission changes. One of the big things that I run, I don't know if any of you have experienced this. I'm sure I'll see a bunch of people do a thumbs up, clap, whatever. People not understanding the difference between copy link and share link. Copy link, it's based off of what are permissions are on the site, library, list, or whatever, and you're copying a link to someone so that, you say, hey, check this out. If you share a link, you're breaking permissions on that document, list, library, site, and sending that to somebody, and then permissions become slightly haywire. Actually, they can get very haywire. So one of the things I run will be a permission matrix report out of auditing, so I can see any of those types of changes so that they can be cleaned up. Okay. But you're just going to choose your time frame you want to run it. But you have a ton of different activities that you can run, from file and page activity, deleted users, copy, deleted folders, renamed, anything like that. Any different than share more. There's a lot more you can do in here than you can in ShareGate. Absolutely. There's so much more that you can do in here. Oh, you're talking about the permission matrix. Yeah, to me, it's cleaner to read it in here, and there's more that you can do with it than you can in ShareGate. The ShareGate one's great, but as you know, it can be rather large and cumbersome. You can really drill down within this one. So definitely take a look at that. Again, that's just your health, permissions, which are the roles. And then, yeah, here's some additional settings out here for your security center. Here's what time zone, your defender, tells you your tenant ID, your org ID. Any of your email notifications, you can configure that. Any of your preview, if you want to turn on preview or not. And if you want to do the streaming API, you can add one out there for that. All right. Compliance Center. So the Compliance Center hasn't changed a lot recently with adding new features or anything. This one has been pretty stable compared to the security, which seems to have changed like every single week in the last 6 months. This one it's kind of held its own for a while. When they split out, when they did this last split, it's kind of stayed the same. Things that I want to call out here, the compliance manager, as you can tell, it's going to look very much like the security report. However, there's a huge difference. One, you see this number, it's huge. Okay. Two, notice Microsoft is going out already and saying, it runs some processes once a tenant comes up, and it already goes ahead and checks some things off the list. The rest of it is up to you. Okay. So notice it says not completed 846, completed 13 out of scope 0. If you go up here to improvement actions, looks identically the same as well. Here's the difference. Your compliance manager is based off of what you're using and is essentially more of a checklist. Okay. So say I am using auditing. Okay. Since it came up to the top here. So I'm using auditing. So for auditing, I need to review these items, only the ones that say auditing. I need to go and review those items, okay? And when I say review, here's the reason why. Because they might be configuration. They might just be asking you a question like, do you have a disaster recovery plan? You're going to check that off, and it's going to provide you where you can put a URL or you can upload the disaster recovery plan. It just wants to know that, hey, do you know that you probably should have one? Check it off. And then the other is just informational, giving you some information, right? So it's essentially a checklist to ensure that if you're using this functionality, these things have been taken into consideration. So will all companies complete all of the compliance manager actions? Probably not, because every company, there's going to be something they don't use, right? So just keep that in mind. It can be overwhelming if you look at 849 or however many it was, but you only need to review and go through the things that you're using in your environment. So if you're using Defender, you'll want to make sure you follow all the Defender stuff. Alerts are same as alerts over there. Again, you have a bunch of reports that Microsoft has provided you here. I'm getting close to time, aren't I, Tim?
Yep, we're at 10:22. So we have about 8 minutes left.
Okay, all right. Give me just a couple minutes because nothing else has really changed there. If you have the proper license, Endpoint Manager, notice I don't have it's not an admin center inside the admin center app. As you can tell, it takes you directly out to Azure. But this overall whole thing's new, but it is very license based, but notice you can manage, desktops, you can do all that kind of stuff. Thank you, Ollie. I appreciate that. Exchange, SharePoint, nothing really new there. A couple things here on SharePoint. Why are you being slow? Come on. See, it knows I'm in a hurry. Now it's going to be slow. All right. So a couple things here. If go through your environment, okay? Because many assessments that I do, what I find out is no one's ever really looked at the sharing and it's set to the default along with this. And I look at what their security requirements are and it doesn't fit. Make sure it fits for you. The other thing is on settings. Go through these. This is the other area I feel like people kind of forget as well. They don't go and update this or fill this out and they leave it at default. Like there are things that I love out here. Like I can set like to create pages in the SharePoint sites. Do I want to allow people to create pages? Great. Do I want to allow commenting on modern pages? So I get that biggest complaint. It was like, oh, I always forget to turn off the comments. We don't use comments. And I go, well, you can go turn it off as a whole if you want, but they don't know it exists because this piece of the configuration, it gets missed. And you got storage limits for OneDrive, syncing. They've added the new stream one in here. So this is new. And this is just really around the app launcher tile. Do you want to automatically switch to the new SharePoint or do you want it to stay on the classic stream, etc.? So you have options out here, but they don't talk about this a lot. So I would just definitely make sure you go out there and check that out. Teams, I got one big thing and then it's all yours, Tim.
All right,
Teams,
sounds good.
the thing, there's a lot of configuration in team, but as someone who is in IT and you have to deal with users all the time, if you give them something, even though you say we're not supporting it, but if they see it and they can click on it, they will use it, which then means you have to support them. They can have content in these areas. You get content sprawl. One person is using this for calendaring, another person's using that. One person's using this for one-on-ones, another person's using this. Inside the Teams app for Teams, you have all these applications that Microsoft makes available to all your users out of the box. You can go out and block these. You can go set up your policy. I believe it's this one. Actually, it might be permission ones. Oh, permission one here. In here, Microsoft apps, you can say, I want to allow all Microsoft apps. Third-party apps, I can block them all. So that then when they go to Teams and they go to those three dots, they don't see any of those third-party applications. They only see the ones that you're using. And then you can have custom apps as well. You can drill down in those, what you really want them to see, so what you want them to use. In turn, if you're also an organization that is not using all the applications up here, like bookings and Sway and all that stuff, then don't show them. Great way to get rid of those, or not really get rid of them. You can create a conditional access policy and block those apps and it'll remove it from the app launcher. Also, if you're getting started with this and you don't want to use, give them all the apps all at one time, you can block all of them except the ones you want to start with. And then as you grow, you can unblock those and then they'll show up. So it helps, increases user adoption, helps IT from trying to support too many things at one time and all that stuff. So it really helps out IT and user adoption within your organization. Me too, Rich. It definitely should be, to me, it should be a planned thing. Users get very overwhelmed and some things never get used and you got data sprawl all over the place. So I'm with you. On that note, thank you guys very, very much for coming to my session. And I hope you guys learned something new and love the session. Tim, all you.
All right. 1 second.